Unless they get bailed out, they're done. They're be bankrupt. I believe they've sold 2 tranches now of $1.5 billion each. So they raised $3 billion in a week. The last one was done at 4.25%. I can do a mortgage. You can do a mortgage at under 4.25%. Those are junk rates. That shows you they're not a good credit, and the market believes them not to be a good credit. Their CDS is spiking, and of course, you look at their the existing bond prices; those have been collapsing. Deutsche Bank is not going to survive unless there's some type of a bailout, and this is a problem because Deutsche Bank cannot be bailed out without the rest of the European banks stepping up and saying, hey, we want to bail out. Mm-hmm. So it's a big problem for the EU. First off, the 14 billion non-coincidentally equals the 14 billion that the EU says that Apple owes. So it's the exact same number, and I see no coincidence there at all. I mean, it's tit for tat. I would just say that it's economic war is what this is, and we're obviously going to talk about war later on.
Yes,
this is part of it. Well, I think a whole bunch of paper contracts were sold. We know a bunch was sold on the COMEX. Andrew Maguire reported that all kinds of paper. I think he said 1,000 tons. That's 40% of global production was sold during the week. It was done with paper, and frankly, I don't care. I mean, it does not matter whether gold's 1,200, 1,500, 1,000. It makes no difference because either you're going to own it or you're not going to own it on the other side of what's coming. And what's coming looks like it's right here and right now. And until today, the last couple of days, we've had zero volatility for 90 days or more in global markets. And I mentioned this the other day that the reason that there's no volatility is that volatility creates margin calls. And the system right now is very illiquid. There's very little free cash. In other words, any margin calls that are issued, the money's not there to meet it. So in order to prevent margin calls, they had locked down the markets. Now we'll see what happens with the current news. I suspect volatility is going to absolutely explode. Well, I mean, 2008, had they allowed it to happen, we would be in the process now of picking up the pieces, cleaning up, and maybe even growing. If you look at total global debt, the IMF just came out saying that there's I think the word they used was nervous. There's $152 trillion of debt globally. That's 225% of global GDP. The world is a banana republic. The world is broke. I mean, it's completely mathematically over. There's no way the debt can be paid back. But please understand that 152 trillion that is debt is also what the other party considers an asset. So when the debt doesn't get paid and the debt defaults, well, that 152 trillion, where does that go? Maybe to 15 trillion? I don't know. I don't know how far it'll be marked down. But the asset side of the global balance sheet is going to be decimated. They have nowhere to go. The only possible thing they can do is just print, and that will destroy the underlying currencies themselves. The answer, unfortunately, is war, and that's what's happening right now. We are the strike of a match away from global war. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think the U.S. really wants options. I believe that the U.S. wants war. And I said this probably a year ago or more, that the final chapter or the final act would be a war to cover the misdeeds, to cover the fraud. The only way that the Federal Reserve can say our policies were working. They would have worked if it was not for the war. if it wasn't for the table being kicked over. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now, is kicking the table over. Well, Dave, just this morning, I just pulled up a short list. Well, obviously, let me give you the answer and then we'll talk about that. The answer is truth is starting to come out.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the U.S. wants war, because the truth is starting to come out. We're getting these WikiLeaks drops day after day after day. Just this morning, the Philippines, Duterte, is ordering the U.S. out of the Philippines after 60 years. The Royal Air Force has told their pilots to shoot down Russian fighters over Syria. And oddly enough, even I talked to someone this morning about it, and they're like, CBS, really? CBS apparently has come out with a list of people that died that were close to the Clintons. Call it a kill list, whatever you want to call it. And apparently, and my guess is these emails that are coming out from WikiLeaks are probably the entire 33,000 wiped emails. I even read this morning where the term in one of the emails that was used was wet water, and if you look that up, that's code for assassination. And then 10 days after that email was out, Justice Scalia was dead. So it just the answer is truth. The truth is starting to come out. One of the emails said that Hillary hates everyday Americans. It's just more and more truth that comes out. The populace globally is on the verge of exploding. And the way to cover these tracks and make the emails unimportant, start a war, it's a nuclear war, and that's all she wrote. I mean, you're looking at a financial system that will be in total ruin. Everyone who owes anything isn't going to pay, and everybody who believes they own something, their assets will be worthless. Like we just talked about, that $152 trillion worth of debt. For everyone who owes, there's somebody who owns. So if the debtors aren't paying, then the creditors aren't getting paid, and their asset shrinks or outright goes away. And I mean, we're talking about the financial aspect of it. Let's talk about the humanity aspect of it. You're talking about, hundreds of millions of people probably killed because we are not going to have it's not going to look like Vietnam. It's not going to look like any wars we've had in the past. This is going to be an exchange of nuclear weapons. And if you survive, you're going to be dying a slow death, basically, in a world where your life is completely unrecognizable and up to this point unimaginable. Everything wasn't fine during World War II in America because there was rationing. You had the entire nation geared up to manufacture weaponry. This time around, bombs will be dropping here. So for the first time, literally ever, the U.S. is going to find out what it's like to go to war and have that war partially on our own turf. The manufacturing is gone. Most of the machines that we had have been sold and have been shipped overseas. So we don't even have a manufacturing base. I don't see this as being a very long war. We have, I think, 2 or 3 days of nukes being lobbed back and forth, maybe one at a time. Hopefully that's all it is. And then cooler heads prevail and say, let's stop this. Otherwise it's over. Otherwise you're looking at Armageddon. You're looking at the end. Even if we don't have war, from a financial standpoint, when credit stops, distribution stops. So going to your store to get a loaf of bread that's a thing of the past for a while. Right. Trade with other countries will stop. So that's 500, 600 billion worth of goods that won't be coming in. So there won't be any iPhones. There won't be any Korean, Japanese cars, German cars, whatever, yeah, that's going to stop. But I'm talking about from a you wake up in the morning standpoint and you're hungry, stores aren't going to be open. There's no point in stores being open because they won't have any goods. Distribution is going to break down. In other words, the trucking industry, the rail industry, they're not going to work because credit will have stopped and everything runs on credit. I mean, think about the loaf of bread. That doesn't just appear in a Walmart or your local grocery store. You're talking about a farmer that's got to grow the wheat, and he's got to plant it, he's got to harvest it, he's got to ship it to the silo, then the silo's got to ship it to a intermediary to turn it into bread, and then it's got to get on a truck and it's got to go from wherever the bread is actually made to the shelf. And all of those, every single step uses credit. So that loaf of bread is not going to be made. It's not going to exist. I think the thought process back in 2013-14 was they were going to try to pull a Ronald Reagan from the 80s. The way we took down Russia by dropping oil from $30 a barrel to $10 a barrel, we bankrupted them. This time around, it couldn't be done, but we apparently the people pulling the strings thought it could be done, and I think they miscalculated. What's going to come out during discovery process if any of these lawsuits go forward? What's going to come out is what actually happened, or what actually didn't happen, and what didn't happen was the official story. I mean, I don't know the real story. I suspect I have a great idea of what the real story is, but I know the official story is complete bull. It could not have happened that way. That's going to come out. Again, truth. And that's what this is all about. It's all about, we're in this compressed time period now where truth bomb after truth bomb after truth bomb is being dropped day after day after day. Forget about retaliate. That way they get their money out from the U.S. where it can't be frozen. They can get their hands on the money. You sell stocks, you sell real estate, you sell treasuries. Yeah, it's going to hurt the U.S. It's going to depress the markets that they're selling. It'll also depress the dollar when they end up selling these assets for dollars. They're not going to sit on dollars. They're going to turn around and put them into yuan, or they're going to turn around and put it into gold or whatever. So they'll be selling dollars. It's a form of revenge or punishment or whatever you want on the part of the Saudis, but in reality, it's just common economic sense. Get your assets out of the U.S. so they can't freeze them. And we've done it before. Look how long we froze the Iranian monies. Again, you're opening the discovery process in law, and the truth is a really ugly thing. You could have two pilots jockeying with each other, and they clip wings, and your war starts there. Who knows? Who knows what the match is going to be? All I know is we right now are in a far more dangerous position than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You need to try to be as self-sufficient as possible. I mean, all along I've told people from a financial standpoint, own gold and silver, doesn't matter what price you own it at, because when the system goes down and then comes up at a later date, if this, we get a functioning system later, there's wealth. So you can start in a new system with wealth. But you got to get to the other side. And getting to the other side means you got to eat. You need water, and you need food. You need, could you live without electricity? I mean, just think about, what would it be like to live like they did in the 1850s? No electricity, no running water, the very, very basics.